Let's take a question that's coming from Purnima Rao. Now, Purnima wants to know that she has a son who stays with her in Mumbai. And the son has also bought a flat in Bengaluru. Now, she wants to know that if he gives this out on rent, can she claim full interest on the housing loan, or will this be treated as a self-occupied property with deemed rent? She also wants to know if there is a provision for overdraft facility on a housing loan. Kartik, the question is not very clear, but I'm assuming here that there is some problem with the commas and the full stops, and the question probably is that Purnima has bought the home over here in Bengaluru, and she also owns a home in which her son stays with her currently.
From what I understand, Kavita, is she's saying that her son's staying with her, but he has bought a house in Bangalore.
That's what I'm saying. The question, the way it's been framed,
and also there's a little contradiction in terms of, if the house is going to be on rent, then there is no question of deemed rent. So exactly. I think we will take the essence of the question and try and answer it. So it's very interesting here. Now what happens is, that is the first property. Again, we are making an assumption that the son has bought the first property, and the one that they are staying together obviously is not in the name of the son, right? So the Bangalore property, if they are actually going to put it on rent, which means if they are going to actually earn a rent, then any amount of interest is going to be deductible, because they are going to offer that as income from house property. However, if that house remains vacant, which means then he will qualify under a different section of the Income Tax Act, which will say that, you are not living in your house for reasons of employment or profession or whatever it is, it might be, but it's basically your self-occupied property. And because of that, there is not going to be a deduction to any extent, but that interest deduction will be then restricted only to 2 lakh rupees, because it's your self-occupied property.
So then let's assume that this is property that her son has bought.
That's right.
And if we go with that assumption, what would you advise that he does? Should he then, claim rent on it, rental income on it, claim notional rent on it, showcase it as, property that has been leased out, or should he go with taking a basic minimum on it?
Kavita, the question doesn't arise really, because you see, this is his first property. Right. So if it remains vacant, then we are absolutely clear that he can claim his deduction only to the extent of 2 lakhs for interest, and of course 1.5 lakh under section 80C for principal, because this becomes like a self-occupied property. Maybe he's not physically occupying it for whatever reason, but that is his first property. So the deduction on interest is restricted up to 2 lakh rupees. Now, if the property actually is put out on rent, so there is actually a tenant or a licensee staying in that property, then he is actually earning money, which he then has to offer under the head of income from house property while he files his income tax return and when he does his computation of income. So in that scenario, any amount of interest that he is paying will be deductible from his from the value of the property. So that's basically how it will work out. So they need to understand the difference very, very clearly. If it's on rent, then your full income will come. In this particular scenario, so every scenario is different, because this is his first property, you see.
Right. So essentially, what you need to understand here, Purnima, is that this is a call that you need to take. Yes. If you choose to rent out that property, and if this is your son's first property, if you choose to rent it out, he can claim exemption against interest paid on that on the housing loan. However, if he does not give it out on rent, it will be considered his self-occupied property, and in which case he will be, he can only avail the basic minimum exemption that everybody gets on a home loan.
That's right.
She also has another question. She wants to know if there's a provision for overdraft facility on a housing loan.
There is no overdraft facility on a housing loan. What she is probably referring to, I understand, is a top-up loan on a housing finance. So once you've taken a loan, when the value of the property goes up, then the bank or the lending institution again does a re-evaluation of the property, and then they may be happy to lend you up to 80% of the value of the property. But that's known as a top-up loan. So that top-up loan is available, but if you think about an overdraft facility, then that's not really allowed on a housing loan. Unless, of course, again, she's referring to those products which are brought in by some banks where you actually have a current account linked to your home loan.
I was just going to ask you.
And then that becomes a different kind of a mechanism.
Could you elaborate on that very quickly? We've got somebody waiting on the phone line with a question.
So that's a very interesting account where the way you operate that account is you have a current account linked. So any amount of money which sits in your current account is then assumed to be a deemed prepayment for that particular day. So, and then if you want to use that account, by all means you can use use that account. But so long as you keep it in the bank account, then your interest calculation reduces to the extent of the amount that you have parked in the bank account. So that's basically how it works. It's a very interesting product, but we could have a detailed chat on a
And
subsequent
Purnima, hope we've
opportunity.
answered your question over there, because
Yes.
like I did tell you, the question was worded in a little vague fashion.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/magicbricksnow. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at magicbricksnow. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/magicbricksnow.